Dumelang Absheni Ralocha Sanmanani Muleni. My name is Naledi Mfoloe, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the latest edition of the African Diaspora News Channel, where we unravel the stories that shape our world and our communities. A rather controversial development out of Niger, where the military government has suspended BBC radio broadcasts for 3 months, accusing the outlet of actually spreading fake news and potentially destabilizing social peace. Right now, this suspension, which takes effect immediately, comes amid ongoing tensions surrounding the country's security situation, particularly in the face of violent jihadist attacks in the Talaberi region, right? Now, in a statement, Niger's Minister of Communication described BBC reports on these attacks as baseless assertions, claiming that such coverage was actually part of a larger campaign aimed at undermining the morale of Niger's troops and sowing a division within the country. Now, this includes reports that jihadists reportedly linked to the Islamic State group carried out coordinated attacks that killed 91 soldiers and nearly 50 civilians. And while the BBC has stood by its reporting, stating it will continue its coverage without fear or favor, the Nigerian government seems to view the media outlet as a threat to national unity in a time of crisis. Now, while the BBC suspension may seem like just another example of increasing state control of the media, I think that there's more at play here than just a simple censorship issue. The timing of this suspension, along with the mounting pressure on Niger since the July 2023 coup, actually points to deeper tensions between the new military leadership and the West, particularly former colonial powers like France. And this situation hits home in a number of ways. For one, I think that we can't ignore the historical context here. The military governments in Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso have increasingly turned away from Western influence, particularly France, which has long been involved in the military operation in the region. In fact, the military leadership in Nigeria recently expelled French forces, citing their failure to curb jihadist violence, and has actually openly declared they intend to seek security partnerships with Russia and Turkey instead. But this move to silence foreign media is also deeply tied to the way African nations, and especially those in the Sahel region, are being portrayed in the global media. The BBC is just one example of an outlet that has found itself on the receiving end of accusations from African governments, especially those led by military parties, for reporting on the region's unrest in ways that don't align with the official narrative. And Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali have all suspended or restricted the operations of foreign media at some point since the military takeovers, with accusations of actually spreading propaganda or fake news frequently cited as justification. And I think that the relationship between African nations and the West is actually shifting, especially as countries like Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso actually take steps towards a greater autonomy, right? There's a rising sense of PanAfricanism and a growing desire to actually break free from the legacy of colonialism. And yes, this includes shifting alliances and challenging the old power structures, right? But it also means that African nations will have to grapple with their own internal challenges, and that includes how they handle media freedom and the role of foreign influence in their domestic affairs. And I'll end by saying this, right? The situation in Niger, I believe, is a microcosm of the larger struggle playing out across the African continent. The challenge is not just about fighting external forces like jihadism, right? It's also about navigating the internal dynamics of governance and media freedom and the quest for sovereignty. And as an African myself, I recognize how important it is for African nations to control their own narratives and to chart their own course. What are your thoughts on this? Please, let's continue the conversation in the comment section. We really want to hear from you. And while you're at it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet